As well as the standard fair use policy, this video is protected under the Treaty of Peace and Friendship 1787.
Moors are awake. We are taking our place on this planet.
Islam Moors.
My nationality is Moorish.
Video from a state trooper captures his first encounter with a group of heavily armed men on the highway in Wakefield. That encounter triggered a 9-hour standoff. New here at 6 o'clock, the I-Team's chief investigative reporter, Cheryl Fiandaka, takes a look at what's on that videotape.
The Commonwealth is prepared to share.
After hours of delays, a judge held a dangerousness hearing for 6 of the suspects in Saturday's highway shutdown on Route 95 in Wakefield. The evidence included body camera video from the state trooper that first came across the heavily armed militiamen refueling on the side of the road. You can see the body camera video played in court shows Jamal Latimer, the leader of the Rise of the Moors, dressed in camouflage, wearing a bulletproof vest, a body camera, and carrying a high-powered rifle. A second heavily armed member of the militia standing by as they approach the trooper and claim they have the right to carry the weapons across state lines. The men showed their own body camera video in court as well, claiming they were on a peaceful journey to a training camp in Maine. Last Saturday, police arrested a total of 11 males after a more than 9-hour standoff. The judge found all 6 to be dangerous and ordered that they be held without bail.
Many months later.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons have anything to put Honorable Judge Deacon, Justice of Superior Court, now sitting in Woburn for the transaction of criminal business. Draw near, attendant, and shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You may be seated. Court is now in session.
Jurors, let me ask you, I hope that everybody enjoyed, maybe not a long weekend in general, but at least a long weekend away from the trial. Thank you for your punctuality and being here. Let me ask you if each of you has been able to comply with the instructions I reminded you of at the end of the trial day Thursday. All jurors indicating the affirmative, either by nodding their heads or saying so, proceed. Jurors, before I forget, I would have mentioned tomorrow morning, we're going to have to be here again at 10 a.m. Once again, on matters that we have to handle outside your presence, this seems to be the most efficient way for us to take it, and we need to do that without imposing your time. So once again, tomorrow morning, we'll be asking you to be here by 10, just the same as you were today. Also, I want to mention, we're going to take another witness out of order. So you may remember that the Commonwealth was still questioning. Is that right? Sergeant Jones. Sergeant Jones. The Commonwealth was still on the direct examination with Sergeant Jones. We're going to interrupt Sergeant Jones's testimony to take testimony for the witness. And as I explained to you before, that's a routine thing that happens in trials. So obviously, you should draw conclusions from it because any conclusions you draw will be on the warrant. So with that, Commonwealth.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth calls Matthew Simpson.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Morning, Lieutenant. Welcome.
Morning.
You may proceed, please.
Sorry, morning. Nice clear voice so everybody in the room can hear you. Give us the full name, please. The name is Lieutenant Matthew Simpson. And so you're in place, sir? Yes. How so? At Massachusetts State Police. How long have you been employed by the State Police? About 18 years. And currently, what's your assignment? I'm the station commander of the Belgian Barracks. Belgian, yes. Okay. And what prior assignments have you had in your 18-year career with the State Police? Excuse me. I started my career at Springfield Barracks out of Troop B out of Western Massachusetts. From there, I went to the OUI Community Action Team out of Western Massachusetts, and then the Community Action Team in the City of Springfield. From there, I went to the District Attorney's Office as part of the State Detective Unit in County. I was then transferred back out to Field Services, went to the Academy for a while. I was at the Academy for about the last 7 years in different roles. And July 3rd, 2021, were you working with the state trooper? Yes. And what was your assignment at that point? At that time, I was a sergeant of the state police. I was actually working overtime patrol out of the Sturbridge barracks. Okay. And after receiving that call, was there some place that you drove or responded to? Yes, I responded to 95. Okay. And was that in the town of Wakefield? Yes. Was there a particular area that you I don't recall exactly where I was. I was just put out on my assignment for proceedings. Yes. And what did you observe? Well, after 10 a.m. that morning, is there a particular location on 95 in Wakefield? I was asked to come up to the scene and bring my marked cruiser up for transport. Okay. And when you arrived at that location, what did you observe? I observed a member from the SOUT team was subject to custody and just asked to push him in the back. Okay. How was that person dressed in uniform? Wearing like camouflage gear, had a vest on with a head cover. Okay. And the SOP team, that's the state police, essentially that was watching, is that right? Yes. Were there other officers and individuals in that area when you went out? There were. What types of vehicles? What did you observe in terms of the people around you? There were marked cruisers, unmarked cruisers. One of the state police Bearcats were up in the area as well. Lots of different action going on. Okay. The individual you placed in your cruiser, did you check that person for anything or putting them in your car? Yeah, I did a quick pat risk before putting them. Okay. And what, if anything, did you recover during the pat risk? Nothing was recovered. It wasn't a pat risk. It was just a search and arrest. Nothing was recovered at that. Any licenses to carry firearms recovered from this person? No. Any firearms identification cards recovered from this person? No. Okay. So, the vest you described, did you make any observations about the color and markings on it? It was like a tan vest, appeared to have ballistic plates in it, had a Molotov patch kind of in the center of it, and had a hydration tube coming over the shoulder. So, there's some kind of water bag in the back of this thing? Camel bag, something along those lines. And the patch, if you could spell that for the record, just so we're clear, so what you were saying. It's in Greek letters, but it's Molanlave, MOLANLAVE. And so what did you do with this person in the vest? I transported back to A1 again. And what transpired when you got to the A1 barracks and over? Once we get to the barracks, we were in the parking lot of the barracks and somebody started in Chesapeake. Okay, so what, if anything, did you do at that point? Notified EMS and they came to transport. Okay. What, if anything, was done with that person's clothing prior to EMS taking that person away from the Andover barracks? Before assessment, we removed the clothing. Okay. What about the vest? The vest we removed. Okay. And did you follow the ambulance that that person went? Yes, it did. And where else did that person end up? Florence Hospital. And did you stay for a period of time with that individual as an arrestee at the hospital? Yes. And when you left, did another trooper relieve you? Yes. I'll show you a couple things. To show you photographed already attendance. We exhibit 69. Recognize the individual depicted in exhibit 69. Is it? Who's that? That's the subject matter. Okay. And do you note the clothing visible in exhibit 69?
I do.
Okay, what do you understand that to be?
Appears to be some sort of possible garnish.
Okay. Placed exhibit 69 on the projector, published it to the jury, showing you LL for identification. You recognize person in LL for identification.
I do.
And who's that person?
That is the subject I transported from all here.
Okay. Your Honor, I have a redacted version of LL for identification. LL was marked for identification during the testimony of Trooper, I believe it was Stephen Connors. So I have a redacted version of that.
No objection.
No objection.
Without objection, it would be,
Could we make it 69A, since it's the photograph on the screen, Your Honor?
any objection, mark it that way.
No, Your Honor.
No, you're.
Right, so for a redacted version of LL for identification would now be exhibit 69A. Ask someone to spell, and if we spelled it before, it's Pierre's first and last name.
So it's Connell, C-O-N-A-L-D.
Last name is like French Pierre, P-I-E-R-R-E.
Correct. And I'll publish 69A for the jury. And you described some markings on the vest. You recognize the two photographs that handed to you that are on that one sheet of paper?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize?
That's the vest that Mr. Pierre is wearing, a picture of both front and back.
Okay. And what is it about the markings and the appearance of the vest that you recognize?
The color, the patch in the center, that the phrase on that I described, and the hydration.
Right, I offer the two photographs of 69B as a board. No objection.
Objection.
It's similar.
See two photographs? It's two photographs on the page, front and back. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Publishing exhibit 69B is a boy. Sir, have I zoomed in on the front of that vest and that particular patch that you described?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the back of it?
Yes.
Nothing further for Lieutenant Simpson. No cross, Your Honor.
No problem.
Lieutenant, that concludes your testimony. Thank you very much for your expertise. Are we going back to Sergeant Jones?
Just moving on. Yeah, we can resume the testimony, Sergeant.
Right. Everyone, you are still on direct. Is that right?
That is right, Your Honor.
So jurors probably very clearly by now you're experienced with this, but we're going to resume the testimony of Sergeant Jones, which we interrupted the last witness, and he is still under examination with PD advance. Good morning, Sergeant. Sergeant, do you realize that you're still under oath? Yes, sir. You may proceed, Johnson.
Thank you. Sergeant, before we get back into test firing, which is a couple of areas I want to back up and talk about with the various items. I think you still have a copy of your report to refer to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Item 2-1, that's the 9mm. It's a pistol, FPV pistol. You recall that?
Yes.
And just for the record, can you give us the serial number and the make and model of that, just so it's clear?
The make is CZ, model was P10C.
Okay.
The semi-automatic pistol serial number is C as in Charlie 593014.
Item 2-3, your report. Is different pistol. Could you give us the serial number for that item as well?
Serial number is an Alpha, E is an Echo, L is in Lima. Excuse me. Is an Alpha, E is an Echo, L is in Lima, Y is in Yankee, 222.
You see that's also on exhibit 78 here, the box with the pistol.
Yes, sir.
The Jones, or Sergeant Jones. There's item 2-9 on your report. You see that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what is item 2-9?
It's 140 caliber Glock, model 22. It's a semi-automatic pistol, serial number T is in Tango, U is in uniform, N is in November, 798.
And can you see let's check in here and tell me if exhibit 83 is the item we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the items the pistol you described as being in the mini conversion kit. So it gives it a stock.
That's correct.
And it also had a, I believe, a black shoulder strap. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Item 2-5 on your report to examine. Could you give us the make, model, and serial number of that?
2-5 is a 9mm caliber Taurus, model G3, semi-automatic pistol, serial number A is in Alpha, B is in Bravo, L is in Lima, 140844.
And you see, I put exhibit 99 before you. Do you see? Can you tell us that exhibit 99 is the item you just gave us the make, model, serial number for?
That is correct.
Exhibit or item 2-12 on your report. Can you tell us the make, model, serial number of that?
2-12 is a 5.56 caliber palmetto state armory, model P is in Papa, A is in Alpha, 15. Serial number is S is in Sierra, C is in Charlie, D is in Delta, 644
399.
Placing before you exhibit 75. You could just look in the box and tell me if that's the right item.
That's it. That's correct, sir.
Now, that has the appearance of a long gun, but what did you determine it to be based on your measurements and testing?
Due to the barrel length, it's falls under firearm.
Okay. Because the barrel not long enough to be a rotating rifle, essentially.
That's correct.
Now the shotgun you described on Thursday. That item 2-13 in your report?
Yes, sir.
And that was the semi-automatic shotgun, can we call that?
That's correct.
Can you give us the make, model, the serial number of that?
This is a Mossberg. The model is 930. Serial number is an Alpha Epson Foxtrot 229534.
I put exhibit 85 in front of you. Tell me if that's the shotgun you described.
It is.
Okay. You look at your report, item 2-16. Tell us what that item is.
2-16. It's a 5.56 caliber Ruger. The model is AR-556. A semi-automatic rifle. Serial number 855-45207.
Putting exhibit 79 before you. You just look inside that box and tell me if that's the Ruger semi-automatic rifle you just described.
Yes, sir.
Is that the one that had the fold down grip and the sight on top?
That's correct, sir.
I think when we left off on Thursday, you were talking about what you did to measure and test that item. Could you walk us through what you did to measure and test that item?
Yes, we measured the barrel, the overall length of the weapon, also using what we call a trigger pull gauge. Basically, you just you'll charge that weapon, and you'll put the gauge on the trigger, and that's just to see how many pounds per square inch it would take to squeeze the trigger of that weapon. Along that, after that, as far as testing goes, we can take it into the water tank room, firing room, using one piece of live ammunition that was submitted, pointing it into the water tank, squeezing the trigger with that one piece of ammunition being loaded in the weapon. The weapon was discharging a cartridge casing as well as a projectile.
And does that particular type of rifle have, I believe you described it as a charging handle, a charging lever on the top of it?
Yes, sir.
What is the right terminology?
A charging handle.
And is that, as with the other rifle you demonstrated, essentially chamber around from the magazine up into the chamber of the weapon?
That's correct.
I want to show you what types. Now, on your report, there are items that came along with that Ruger rifle, are there not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I believe you testified about them on Friday. One of them was a magazine, one was a chambered round.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm going to hand you Exhibit 79C and a pair of scissors. Ask you to cut open Exhibit 79C. Show the jury what it is. These scissors. Okay, start with the court. If you could stand in front of the jury box and show them that. You can step back in the bag. I put some scotch tape up there so you can close the envelope back up. Okay. I'm going to show you Exhibit 79 one more time. If you could, now you have gloves on, show for the jury exactly where that round, it's now 79C as in Charlie, was recovered from the rifle that is Exhibit 79. Yeah. Loaded. Ready to go. Okay, you can put that back in the box. All right. Exhibit 79D. Can you tell me what this is and how it relates to this particular rifle? What are you holding?
This is the discharge cartridge casing that was ejected and used with the weapon to test fire.
With that same rifle you were sold?
Yes, sir.
Again, with court permission, if you could display that to the juror in front of the jury box. I'll give you a moment just to seal that back up with the scotch tape that I placed up there for you. All right, so this is an envelope that's marked testifier. The other envelopes that have been presented as evidence that are marked test fire, do they contain similar types of things pertaining to those weapons they were submitted with?
Yes, sir, that's correct. All right.
On your report, do you see an item identified as item 2-19?
I do.
Okay. Could you tell us the make, model, and serial number of item 2-19 on your report?
It is a 5.56 millimeter manufactured EPMS Panther Arms. The model is A, there's an Alpha 15 semi-automatic rifle. Serial number F is in Foxtrot, F is in Foxtrot, H is in Hotel, 294980.
I placed before you exhibit 7672. You tell me if that's the item you just described in your report.
It is.
And that's the rifle that had the fixed forward grip, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Or the protruding downward forward grip. So what did you do with this item once it came to the lab?
Similar operation and testing measured the barrel length of this particular weapon to be 17.5 inches. Measured the trigger pull, and when I say that, I mean it's measuring the pounds per square inch that it takes to squeeze that trigger, as well as the barrel length and the overall length of the weapon itself. Taking a piece of live ammunition that was submitted into the loading that into a magazine that was submitted as well. Then charging that same weapon in the firing room, pointing it into the water tank, squeezing the trigger, and it did fire one piece of live ammunition that was now discharged, cartridge casing, and one projectile or bullet.
I believe I showed those items to you last week.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The measurement of the barrel, could you tell us what that was?
17.5 inches.
So based on the measurement as well as the testing you performed at the laboratory, you formed an opinion as to what that item is.
I did.
What is
A rifle.
Right. Do you see an item 2-20 on your report?
Yes, sir.
Would you be good enough to give us the make, model, and serial of that item?
308 caliber Remington Arms model 700 bolt action rifle, serial number R as in Romeo 34590, B as in Bravo.
And like before your exhibit 82, tell me if that's the item you just described.
It is.
So is that the bolt action rifle with the scope on top and the bipod that folds down?
That's correct, sir.
All right, tell us what you did with this item when you got it to the laboratory.
Test fired one live 308 caliber cartridge from a section inventory using the rifle in the same manner. Testing the trigger pull, the overall measuring the barrel length as well as the overall length of the weapon. Placing that live piece of ammunition into the chamber area and pulling the trigger while having it pointed in the water tank as well.
And what did you observe when you pulled the trigger while pointing at the water tank?
That it did fire as the manufacturer designed it to.
Can you tell us what the length of the barrel was?
Barrel length, 26 inches.
So based on the measurement plus your testing of the weapon, you form an opinion as to what that item is.
Yes, sir. That this item is a rifle.
Okay. Last week we testified about 3 items that came out of the Honda. Sure. Put this back for you. Could you tell me if exhibits 87, A, B, and C are the items to which we are referring.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And these are, correct me if I'm wrong, curved magazines, correct?
Correct.
And did you do something to determine how many rounds of ammunition these magazines could hold?
Unloaded each piece of ammunition that was in there as it is now. Then counted each one as I reloaded back into the magazine to its full capacity.
Okay. Do these hold more than 10 or 10 or less?
More than 10.
And what can you tell us what caliber ammunition they appear to hold?
5.56 or yes, 5.56.
Do that for all three of those magazines that are in the bag that you picked up.
Yes, sir.
There was another object you described as recovering from the Honda, showing exhibits 86. What this appeared to
The magazine that holds 40 caliber ammunition.
Okay. Did you do something to determine whether or not it holds more than 10 rounds or not?
Yes, sir.
What did you do?
Unloaded it, then loaded all the way to its capacity once again.
And were you able to determine how many rounds it holds?
Yes, sir.
That
This particular one. Yes, of course. I refer the evidence.
Here, I'll direct your. Let me direct your attention. Here.
Objection.
Basis.
It doesn't appear the witness recognizes which item he's being asked about before his memory is being refreshed.
Oh. Can you give an approximate number of how many rounds that drum magazine held, the 40 caliber drum magazine?
50 live cartridges.
And earlier, we talked about the pistol that had the micro conversion casing.
Yes, sir.
It was the Glock pistol inside a case that gave it a stock.
That's correct.
Now, this drum magazine is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 40 caliber magazine, correct?
That's correct.
What is the caliber of the pistol with the micro conversion?
40 caliber as well.
You also described last week an item, now it's at 95, covered from the van. See this?
Yes, sir.
What if I just hand you the 95?
A drum magazine.
And what caliber ammunition?
5.56.
And did you do something to determine whether or not that holds more than 10 rounds of ammunition or not?
Objection. Asked and answered on Thursday.
Maybe, given the passage of time, I'll give this.
65 live cartridges capacity.
Thank you.
The boxes of ammunition you described as being items 2-21, 22, and 23. Do you recall those?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So those were the large white boxes that you examined. You displayed some of the contents for the jury last Thursday.
Yes, sir.
Did you examine the items therein to determine whether or not those items were ammunition?
I did.
Did you look for the properties of ammunition that you described last Thursday?
Just that's deleting.
How did you, I'll ask it this way. How did you examine them?
Visually inspected the evidence, showing they had components that I could see that led me, and they did qualify as ammunition. That would probably
Objection. It's became a compound question and then called for a narrative.
Split the question up in its component parts.
Sure.
The evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can I be heard a little bit about you?
You may.
You've been referring to this document during your testimony. It's a 6-page document, correct?
Yes, sir.
It's just a report of your measurements and examinations of all the items.
That's correct.
And as I understand it, you prepared it yourself.
Yes, sir.
That pursuant to the sidebar comments, I would offer this as the next.
Okay. With the Community Circulum's objection noted, it will be marked inquiry exhibit 100.
Correct.
Using exhibit 100, going back to my initial question, there's 3 boxes that we went through the contents on Thursday. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
And those are the box marked item 2-21. That appear on page 5 of your report?
It doesn't.
Can you, using that report, tell us whether there was any ammunition that you examined in item 2-21?
It does. It is.
Would you tell us the types of ammunition in item 2-21?
Types of ammunition were 5.56 caliber, 40 caliber.
Could you give us the quantities still, if they're in there?
One first item was a large clear bag with unknown amount of, it was so much that it was unknown.
The objection is sustained as to the reason why the witness didn't count it, but the rest of the answer may stand. So you're not to the extent the witness gave a reason as to why he didn't count the ammunition, that is stricken for the record. You should consider the rest of the answer may stand.
Before we get past that large bag, is that the one that you held up for the jury out of the box on Thursday?
Yes, sir.
So moving past that large bag, give us the rest of the quantities and calibers of ammunition.
Yes, sir.
In item 2-21.
40 live 9mm caliber cartridges, 116 live 5.56 caliber cartridges, 1 magazine, 308 caliber magazine with 20 live cartridges. Oh, sorry. Also 20 live 308 caliber cartridges. 1 magazine with 22 caliber ammunition, one 40 caliber drum style magazine with 50 live cartridges capacity loaded with 40 caliber live ammunition.
So that's the ammunition in the 40 caliber drum magazine we looked at a few minutes.
Yes, sir.
Now, was there a box that you itemized as 2-22?
Yes, sir.
And could you tell us from your report, the exhibit you're holding, the magazines and ammunition contained in item 2-22?
Item 2-22, 20 AR-15 style magazines, 30 live cartridges capacity in each one, fully loaded. One box of 20 live 7.62 by 51 caliber cartridges. One box of 50 live 308 caliber cartridges.
And was there a box that you itemized as 2-23 for purposes of your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And using the exhibit you're holding, could you tell us whether there was ammunition in item 2-23 and then the quantity of calibers?
There is.
Go ahead.
Reading down the list. 520 live 223 caliber cartridges. 300 live 9mm Luger caliber cartridges. 100 live 12 gauge shot shells in the manufacturer box. 140 live 5.56 caliber cartridges. 26 live 12 gauge shot shell in a carrier. Six bags of various caliber ammunition. One drum style magazine capacity of 65 live cartridges loaded with 5.56 caliber ammunition. One 9mm Luger magazine loaded with 9mm Luger ammunition.
If I could just have one. Nothing further on to the back. There is one issue I'd like to raise for
Cross-examination, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
So I want to go through the search of the van in the Honda pickup truck. So you're with a group called the ballistics section.
Yes, sir.
And that's also called the firearms identification section.
That's correct.
And that's all part of the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab.
Yes, sir.
And you were one of the troopers present at the danger barracks for that search.
Yes, sir.
That specifically was a 2018 Ford Transit van and a 2006 Honda Ridgeline pickup truck. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now that search started at about 10:30 p.m. on July 3rd. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So just before midnight of the same day as what happened in Wakefield on the side of the highway, correct?
That's correct.
So less than 24 hours after the so-called spring vigil, correct?
Yes, sir.
And about how many hours would you say it took you to complete your search of those two cars?
approximately 3 to 4 hours.
And is it fair to say that there were members of the Middlesex State Police Detective Unit there as well?
Yes, sir.
And so the job of the Middlesex State Police Detectives Unit, they have a few roles. One of the jobs is to organize and run the investigation.
Yes, sir.
And that includes conducting interviews.
I believe so, yes, sir.
And they would also call on appropriate departments to assist with any investigations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if there's cash or drug evidence collected, they would be the ones to collect that.
That's correct.
And they would also collect any personal items that do not need to be sent off for testing. Correct?
Correct.
Now, there were 3 members of the state police detectives there that night, correct?
I believe so.
Trooper Mark Delaney was present.
Yes, sir.
Trooper Michael Sullivan was present.
Yes.
And Lieutenant Bruce O'Rourke was also present. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's all the members that you recall from the Middlesex State Police Detectives Unit at the Danvers Barracks that night, correct? Correct. And am I correct when I say that you were not the only member of the firearms identification section there that night, correct?
Correct.
Now, you just described for us what your role is on direct examination, correct?
Sir, yes, sir.
So if there's ballistics evidence, you would be the one to collect that.
That's correct.
But if there's cash or drugs, that would go to the state police detectives unit. They would be the ones to take that and do whatever with that, correct?
Correct.
And to be specific, you're called to the scene as a member of the firearms identification section if any drugs are used or any guns are used or involved, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so if you are called to the scene, not your lab work, but if you're actually called to the scene, you're responsible then for the chain of custody, the initial chain of custody of that ballistic evidence, correct?
Correct.
Now, I want to just list off who from your ballistics section was present there. So we have you, of course, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's Trooper Chris Lavalato.
Yes, sir.
And there's Sergeant Kevin Callahan, correct?
Correct.
And then Lieutenant David Cahill was also present, correct?
Yes, sir.
So all the members of the state police ballistics section who were present at the Danvers Barracks that night, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, there was also members from the crime scene services section that were present for that search as well, correct?
That's correct.
Now, those members, those are sworn members of the state police, correct?
Yes, sir.
Their job is to photograph the scene and make any video documentation as necessary. Is that correct?
Correct.
If there's any scale measurements that need to be taken, they would be the ones to do that, correct?
That's correct.
And if there's fingerprint, if anybody's looking for fingerprints, they would be the ones to dust for prints, essentially, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if tire and foot impressions were somehow relevant to the investigation, they would be the ones to check for and measure those, correct?
Yes.
So I just want to list off who from crime scene services section was present that night, if you recall. Trooper Marty Cunniff was present.
Yes.
Trooper Shane Pierce.
Yes.
Sergeant Michael Perry.
Sure. Yes.
And Lieutenant Ken Heffernan was also present, correct?
Yeah.
Those two are the only members of the crime scene services section who were present at the Danvers Barracks that night for the 2 searches, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your initial stop, after you collected the ballistics evidence, you went to the district attorney's office in Woburn before you went to the crime office, is that correct?
Me?
Yes. No. You took it directly back to the lab in
Correct.
Now, there's also a unit called the crime scene response unit, is that correct?
That's correct.
And nobody from the crime scene response unit was present for this search, correct?
So the initial search at the barracks?
Right, we're just at the barracks, right, at the Danvers Barracks, the night of July 3rd.
Crime scene was at the barracks.
So there was somebody, at least one person from the crime scene response unit present at the barracks for the search of the 2 cars.
They had to.
They had to, or you remember somebody from that section being?
The crime scene unit was on scene at the barracks.
Right, so to go through the job role of the crime scene response unit, those are civilian forensic scientists, correct?
Yes, sir.
The members I described earlier, the crime scene service section, those are troopers that have a badge, correct?
Yes.
They're not civilians. Correct. All right, and the role of the crime scene response unit, their job would be to identify, sketch, test, and screen, and collect and preserve biological evidence. Is that correct? Correct. And at the scene, not in the lab, but at the scene, they would also be the ones to perform gunshot residue testing. They would. And if there's any trace material collections, they'd be the ones to conduct that, correct? Correct. And if it occurred in the case, they would also perform documentation for blood staining patterns. Correct. All right, so I want to shift over to the work that you did at the lab. So we're leaving the badge and we're going to the lab. Okay. Yes. All right, so am I correct when I say that the testing that you just testified to last week and this morning, you did that in December of 2020, correct? Correct. And that report that we just, that was just submitted to evidence as Exhibit 100, you completed that report on December 14th, 2020, correct?
Correct. Counsel, just a clarification. Exhibit 100, were in my records, this is a certificate. Not a report. I just didn't want to make confusion. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, yes, opposing counsel used to report, I meant to say certificate. So that certificate that was introduced, you completed that on December 14th, 2021, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't test all of these weapons and ammunition all on that one day, did you?
No.
It took you a few days?
Correct.
How many days would you say it took you to complete all of the examinations?
Approximately about 1 week, 5 days. 5 days, so 5 to 7 days.
So 5 to 7 days for you to complete that testing?
Yes, sir.
But that was all done in December, correct?
Correct.
Now I want to go through the lab protocols with you. So when the ballistics evidence is taken to the lab, the first step in ballistics evidence is not necessarily to just immediately conduct a testifier. Is that correct?
Correct.
Am I correct when I say that without getting to what those reports said, this evidence that was just introduced through you, that was submitted for DNA and fingerprint testing before you conducted your examination, correct?
Correct.
Am I correct when I say that that's because the testifier can interfere with the collection of DNA?
That's correct.
And it's also true that it can interfere with the collection of any fingerprint evidence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, on some of not all of that evidence, there's like a dust or a chemical on it.
Yes, sir.
And that's, in your experience, from the fingerprint technician examining the items for fingerprints, correct?
Correct.
So, to the extent that this evidence had, is it fair to call it a white dust on it? To the extent that this evidence had white dust on it, that's not how you retrieved it from the van or from the pickup truck, correct?
Correct.
Right. And am I also correct when I say that fingerprinting is not done with every single item of ballistics evidence that you test, correct?
Correct.
And DNA is also not tested for every single time you conduct a test.
Okay. Basis. Beyond the scope, some facts, not evidence. There's no beyond the scope objection to cross-examination. So overall.
So DNA testing is not ordered for every item of ballistics evidence that you test, correct?
Not my field of expertise, so I don't know exactly which pieces they would test. If that answers your question.
So I'm asking, so these items were submitted for DNA testing and for fingerprint testing, correct?
Yes.
Right. And so in terms of time, you conducted your testing after you knew that whatever the DNA person did, whatever the fingerprint person did, they did their job before you did yours, correct?
Correct.
And that's proper lab protocol.
Yes.
Because it can, your testing can interfere with DNA testing.
That's correct.
And I'm correct when I also say that DNA testing is not ordered on every single item of ballistics evidence that you test.
Objection, pass an action. Overruled.
DNA testing is not ordered on every single item of ballistics evidence that you test, correct?
As far as my portion of
Just your knowledge of lab protocols as a member of the firearms identification section, what you know about lab protocols.
not 100% sure that they would or would not test every single piece, but I know they do take samples of the items and requests that the request is for.
Well, have you ever had to hold off on conducting ballistics examination until DNA testing?
Yes.
And the same is true as well for fingerprint analysis, correct?
Correct.
Now, am I correct when I say that in this case, the district attorney's office requested a DNA examination?
Gotcha. I'll hear you, counsel.
So, these items of evidence, the district attorney's office, if you know, requested DNA testing.
I'm not privy to what exactly the DA's office were requested specifically, but these items were sent out for forensic DNA.
Are you familiar with a program called LIMS, an acronym LIMS at the lab?
Yes, sir.
That's essentially your case management system, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in that, one who works at the lab can keep track of chain of custody.
Yes, sir.
And that they can know who has conducted what tests.
They can.
And there's also something called a case conversation log.
Yes, sir.
And that keeps a note on who is requesting what to be done on certain lab items. Is that correct?
Yes.
At any point, did you ever review the case conversation log?
At the various times, yes.
So, do you have a memory as to whether the district attorney's office in that case conversation log requested DNA to be done?
I believe so.
Jeff. Objection. Your Honor, call for your second. Move to strike. I'll hear you over the headset.
We were talking about the case conversation log. That's part of the LIMS system.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us all what LIMS stands for?
This is our system that we keep track of all evidence, whether it's ballistic evidence, whether it's anything related to the lab as evidence period. It'll show in layman's terms. It'll do have a breakdown of every item number that is brought into the lab to be tested.
Right. And is your memory exhausted as to what the case conversation log said about who requested DNA testing?
Yes, sir. My memory is exhausted in that period.
Would a copy of that case conversation log refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, motion.
You may no need to ask.
Sergeant, I'm just going to direct your attention to this part of this document. And if you remember, once you've had a chance to look at that, just look up at me and ask you some follow-up questions. Is your memory refreshed as to who requested DNA testing to be done?
The specifics of who, yeah.
It was a member of the district attorney's office, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. You used the term semi-automatic earlier, is that correct?
Yeah.
Semi-automatic means that when the operator of the firearm pulls the trigger, the weapon will shoot one bolt, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So what happens if on a semi-automatic weapon, somebody pulls and holds down the trigger? It doesn't let go.
Semi-automatic?
Yes.
You would only have one discharge projectile and one discharge cartridge case.
Right. That's contrasted with a weapon that's fully automatic.
Correct.
If a weapon is fully automatic, and you pull down the trigger, that's just going to keep shooting until either you let go or you run out of bullets. Is that correct?
That's correct.
None of these weapons were fully automatic weapons, correct?
Correct.
And none of these alleged weapons, none of these were what one would call a machine gun either. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in your inspection of the alleged weapons, am I correct when I say that none of these serial numbers were scratched off?
Correct.
And for that shotgun, the end of that barrel was not sawn off, was it?
That's correct. It is not.
Sergeant, I'm approaching you with Exhibit 83. You can get off the witness stand if you need to. This is the pistol that was modified with that conversion kit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you take a look at the outside of the box? It says long arm collection and storage box. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now that term long arm, sometimes people in the military police will call a rifle a long arm. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now this item, the Glock with the conversion kit, that is not actually a long arm. Correct. That's just in the long arm box because it's longer with the conversion kit. But in your opinion, that's still a firearm is distinguished from a rifle.
Council, if this is a good place to take a break, we'll take the morning recess now and then resume as the race returns. We're going to take the morning recess again. We do our best to keep the 15 minutes. A colleague of mine is calling the same. We're going to take a 10-minute recess for 15 minutes. We'll see you at 20, which kind of gets at the heart of the matter. But we will do our best to be as close to 15 minutes.
All rise.
Council, first of all, ADA Vance, thank you for spotting that issue. And I appreciate it. It's reassuring for everyone. It's also rare. It occurred to me before we went to jury that I should mention my approach to evidence in firearms cases, so that you can think about over the next day or so what your position is. But as a preliminary matter, what I generally tell juries is that firearms and ammunition will not go automatically into the jury room with them. They will remain in the courtroom in custody of essentially court officers in the court. That they can request any exhibit be sent into them. or any class of exhibit. So for example, if they say we want to see all the ammunition, they can ask for all the ammunition. Or if they ask for, we want to see all of the firearms, meaning pistols, shotguns, rifles, we want to see all of them. That's okay too. But what I won't permit is firearms or guns and ammunition to go in at the same time. So that they can't do. But I'm not going to send either guns or ammunition into them just here. Here are all the exhibits. We'll send in a list of exhibits, tell them they can request any one or more guns or any one or more pieces of or classes of ammunition, but not at the same time. So that's my general approach.
That makes sense. I just want to add, and they want to also tell them that the magazines classified with the ammunition. Pretty much every magazine is still ammunition.
Right, I certainly will do that, but yeah, that's right. A magazine is an ammunition category, in the ammunition category. So you can think about that. You don't have to tell me now, but if you object to that approach, let me know before we finalize the evidence and send the evidence to the jury. Right? Are we ready to bring the jury back in? Okay, let's bring it in. All rise, jury enter. May be seated for the back in session. You may proceed, counsel, or resume.
Sorry, I want to go back to the search of the van. This was a black Ford Transit van? Yes, sir. You testified on Thursday, publishing exhibit publishing exhibit 77 on the monitor. Do you recall this exhibit 77?
Yes, sir.
So that's in between the front driver's seat and the front passenger seat of the Ford Transit, is that correct?
Correct.
And so as you personally took this photograph, correct? You did not, you were present when this photograph was taken though?
Yes.
Now, is it fair to say that when you or other officers or troopers are photographing this car, you'll photograph what you see first, remove something, document it, and then take another photograph of where you're taking it from? Is that correct?
Correct.
Or at least that's how you did it with photographing the front seat here.
Yes.
Correct. So this depicts a pistol and then two rifles underneath it, correct?
Yes.
And then there's subsequent exhibits that I'll get to where we just see the two rifles and then the one rifle, correct?
Correct.
So do you see what appears to be the handle of one of the Glocks that was recovered?
Yes.
Do you need to get off the witness stand to see better?
Magazine.
Okay. Would you agree with me that there's no magazine loaded into that pistol? Yeah, you can get up or like I can hand you the exhibit directly. Correct. So there is no magazine loaded into that pistol, correct?
Yes, no.
There is no magazine in that pistol. Okay. Moving that from the overhead. I'm putting exhibit 71 up on the overhead for you. Can you see that okay? So is this a subsequent photograph that was taken after the exhibit that I just put up on the monitor? Right. All right, so this photograph is from the same angle, same spot, but without the Glock with the holster, is that correct? Correct. Now, can you see the what you allege to be a rifle on top? You see the scope right next to the driver's side seat buckle? Correct. That's the one with the true glow scope, is that correct? Now you can get off, I'm going to stand if you need to see better. Is it fair to say that you can see the scope with the true glow scope?
Yes, sir.
Right. Can you see whether that weapon is loaded with a magazine? It is not loaded with a magazine, is that correct? All right, and you can take a seat again if you'd like. Now, you noted that so that's not the Ruger rifle, correct? You can get off the stand again if you need to. That is not the Ruger with the true glow scope, is that correct? Right, that's the DPMS Panther Arms, or is that the Palmetto Armory?
Without seeing the actual evidence, the actual.
Would your ballistic certificate refresh your recollection, or would it be easier for you to remember which rifle that is based off of the true glow scope if you had your ballistic certificate?
Yes.
Do you have it up there with you?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to refer to that. Let's do 100. Exhibit 100. You recall looking at your ballistic certificate exhibit 100, which rifle had the true glow scope?
Actual.
Or what is it fair to say that that is for that weapon that's a relatively short rifle? Excuse me, short barrel. You can go ahead. Yes, the one with the scope with the white lettering on the side of it.
Yes, sir.
So that's the PA-15, the Palmetto Armory, one that you classified as a firearm.
Correct.
You justified earlier that you noted that the Ruger had a round in the chamber. Is that correct?
Correct.
But there's no notation that that Palmetto Armory PA-15 has a round in the chamber, correct?
Correct.
Taking that off the overhead, and now I'm putting exhibit 70 up. Do you recognize that? That's the DPMS Panther Arms, excuse me, the DPMS rifle.
Correct.
All right, and can you see whether that one has a magazine loaded into it? Sure.
That's not.
And you made no notation in that certificate exhibit 100 as to whether that had a round in the chamber, is that correct?
Sure.
So there's no round in the chamber on that one. I'm going to hand you the Ruger rifle. I'm going to get your gloves on. This is exhibit 79. If you could get off the witness stand and hold that rifle up, however you think it's safe. So that rifle has a collapsible buttstock. Is that correct? Right. Can you put the buttstock into the fully extended position? How does one go about locking that in place?
But you squeeze underneath him and make it several different lengths.
Now, behind the grip, do you see there's two buttons or there's two switches? Is that correct? Behind the grip, above where the thumb would be, there should be two switches there. One might be a safety, not the, you have the safety, and then you have there should be a clicker there that, can we stand in front of the jury? So Trooper, there should be a clicker right here. What is that button for?
This just holds the lower and the upper receiver. This is the lower receiver. This is the upper receiver with the barrel and everything. So if you punch that out, it would allow you to start disassembling the weapon.
And can you flip the weapons of the rifle faces towards the ground? And can you put the buttstock back into the, we'll call it the folded position. So does this weapon have any of that forensic or chemical dust on it? And that's the fingerprint dust we were talking about earlier. You place the weapon back inside the evidence bag and the box. Just need a moment, Your Honor. You also search the back seat of the Ford Transit van, is that correct? Correct. Now, this is the one that had most of the camping equipment in it, is that right?
Yes.
And you recovered an alleged firearm, or which alleged to be a firearm from the back seat behind the front passenger seat?
Yes, sir.
I'm approaching you with this photographs. You take a look at those photographs and look up at me once you're done. Do you recognize those two photographs?
Yes.
That's the back seat of the Ford Transit van immediately behind the front passenger seat. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it depicts the back end of a firearm that's loaded, that's inside a holster. Is that correct?
Correct.
Those are two photographs, but one just depicts a closer up than the other.
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of one of the alleged firearms that you recovered that night?
That is correct.
I'd offer these, Your Honor.
Okay.
Without objection, there'll be exhibits 101 and 102.
Publishing this on the overhead. Putting exhibit 101 up there. So, Trooper, is that the closer of the two photographs that we just talked about?
It is.
Would you agree with me that there's no magazine loaded inside that pistol? And to your recollection, that alleged firearm also did not have any ammunition in the chamber. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now we talked earlier about how the photographs were taken. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
So you did not personally take any of these photographs, but you were present, correct?
Correct.
And when you and the other officers and troopers are going through the van and pickup truck, you'll photograph what you see and then start taking stuff on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Back seat of the transit. Approaching you with another photograph. Just take a look at that and I'll look at me once you're done. Do you recognize that photograph? So that's the, is that very accurate depiction of the back seat of the Ford Transit van before you and the other troopers started pulling stuff out of it? I'd offer this.
No objection. Without objection, and Ms. Razor.
Actually, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Objection.
Without objection, it will be exhibit 103.
Publishing this on the overhead. So Trooper, can you see exhibit 103 up on the overhead?
Yes.
So that's essentially what the van looked like before you started searching it with the other troopers. Is that correct? You testified on Thursday that there's a large amount of camping gear in the back seat, excuse me, in the van. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Meaning your photograph, please take a look at it and look up at me once you're familiarize yourself with that. Do you recognize that photograph? So you don't know, you were not personally present when that photograph was taken? You were not? So you testified that you were only there for about 3 or 4 hours before you collected your ballistic evidence and you left?
Objection. Basis.
We heard what's the device?
Yes.
So whenever that photograph was taken, you were not present, but correct. Sergeant, I'm putting exhibit 42 up on the overhead. Do you recall this exhibit? You may. Do you remember this exhibit?
Yes, sir.
This is the backseat of the Honda pickup.
Yes, sir.
You can resume the wind stand if you'd like. So that depicts the bolt action rifle on the floorboard of the backseat of the Honda. Is that correct? Sure. Now, when you first opened that door, first of all, did you personally open that door, or did somebody else who was there searching open it? But you're the one who retrieved that rifle, correct? Now, is it fair to say that before that rifle was taken, there was other camping gear and food and things like that in the backseat before that photograph was taken, correct?
Good afternoon. Now, when you were testifying on Thursday, you told us that you first, before going back to Denver barracks to actually search these vehicles, you first went to the scene on 95 Courthouse, right?
Yes.
And you searched the area to make sure it was safe from a ballistic perspective, right?
Correct.
And that means making sure there were no discharge casings on the ground or any sort of firearms related items on the ground or in the area, right? And you did that by yourself or with other people from the firearm investigation?
With others.
Okay, do you remember how many of you there were?
Total of 4.
Okay, and so the 4 of you at that time were searching not inside the cars, but in the physical area around the cars on the highway, right?
Correct.
Okay, and you didn't find any ballistics related items outside of the cars, right? Okay, and now sometimes when you respond to crime scenes and you're looking for ballistics related evidence, if for example there's been a shooting, you do find things like projectiles or cartridge casings on the ground, right?
Correct.
Okay, but that didn't happen here, right?
Correct.
Okay. When you were, now I want to shift to talk about the search back at the Danvers Fair. So you were helping to find the firearms related items in the cars and document that, right?
Correct.
And when you were at the scene, before you got back to the Danvers Fair, you did not search the cars, right?
Correct.
That's something the bomb squad was doing, right?
There were other units that were in checking the area as well.
Okay. But you weren't looking in the cars at that time?
No.
Okay. So at the time that you were doing your search and documenting everything you've been talking about, that you talked about last week and today, that was later after the cars returned to the barracks. So you have no knowledge of where any of those firearms were before they got returned in those cars to the barracks, right?
Correct.
You don't know where they were throughout the 9-hour encounter on the side of the highway, right? And you don't know where they were before that encounter started, right?
Correct.
So you talked a lot about firearms and ammunition in your testimony. I want to ask you about blank. A blank is a cartridge that doesn't have a projectile in it, right?
Correct.
So when you shoot a blank, you might hear a noise and see a flash, but there's no projectile that comes out of the firearm, right?
Correct.
And blanks are something that people sometimes use for target practice, right? What would a blank be used for?
Blank would be, say, for example, at a track meet, track and field meet, the person starts the race would have what those could be physical ways when they started. You would have a blank in it just for the sound effect to get the runner started, but there's no projectile.
Okay, that's very helpful. So you can hear the sound, but there's no risk anyone's going to get hurt, right? But now the van and the Honda were completely full of stuff when you started doing the search in the Danvers Fair, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were there focused on firearms related items, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you, and shoot two photos. Do you recognize those to be photos of what the interior of the van looked like as the police were just starting to do the search?
Yes.
So in other words, is that a fair and accurate depiction of what the inside of the van looked like when it got to the van?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit these as the next two exhibits.
No objection.
Without objection, there'll be exhibit 104, exhibits 104 and 105.
Gonna publish these to the jury. This is what's just been marked as exhibit 104. And exhibit 105. And then as you were testifying on cross-exam, as items were removed, additional pictures were taken, and you were doing your documentation, right?
Yes.
And we need four more photos. You could use to look at those. Do you recognize those as being photos of the interior of the pickup truck, again, when it got back to the barracks as the search was starting?
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of what the inside of the pickup truck looked like when it got back to the barracks? Your Honor, I move to admit these next four photos.
No objection.
No objection.
Without objection, there'll be exhibits 106 through 100.
I'll let you to the jury. Marked as exhibit 108. (109), 106, and 107. Now, during that search of the van, there were also some airsoft rifles recovered, right? I'm gonna show you two pictures and just ask if they refresh your memory about whether you found any of them. Does that refresh your memory about whether any airsoft rifles in an airsoft pistol were recovered from the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you recognize those photos to be two airsoft rifles and an airsoft pistol that were recovered? Thank you. I would move to admit these as the next exhibits.
Okay. No objection. Without objection, will be exhibits 110 and 111. Sorry, you asked him which vehicle they were recovered from, but I didn't get you.
Those are recovered from the van, is that right?
I think so.
Before I publish these, well, I guess I'll just publish them. This has been marked as exhibit 110. And exhibit 111. So an airsoft rifle looks like a rifle, but it has a colored tip, is that right?
Yes.
And usually it's orange or maybe always. And that the purpose of that is to signify that it's not a real firearm or a real rifle, that it's an airsoft rifle.
Yes.
Okay. And an airsoft rifle shoots something called airsoft BBs, right?
Correct.
And those are plastic BBs.
Yes.
And plastic BBs are softer than like a lead or metal BB that would be shot out of a BB gun, right?
Correct.
And airsoft rifles and airsoft guns generally were created to be used recreationally, right?
Yes.
Because they shoot out these softer plastic BBs, they were created to be used often in like war type games, right?
Yes.
And in the picture that's up on the screen, if you can see it, and feel free to shut down if you can't, next to one of the airsoft rifles, there's also a container of airsoft BBs, is that right?
Yes.
And do you recall during the search of the cars whether, do you recall that during the search of the cars there were a number of like paper targets in the cars as well?
Yes.
Continue another photo. Do you recognize that photo to depict some paper targets that were recovered in the van at the end of our barracks?
Yes.
Your Honor, I moved to dismiss the bit.
No objection. No objection. Without objection, it's just one photo.
Yeah.
Exhibit 112.
Thank you. Now, on cross-exam, with Attorney Thompson, you mentioned that of the items you collected and believed to be firearms, they all had serial numbers and none of those serial numbers have been scratched off or manipulated, is that right?
That's correct.
And a serial number is basically a way to identify an item, right?
Yes.
And it's a way that law enforcement sometimes traces firearms, right?
Correct.
And sometimes people scratch off serial numbers on firearms, right? You've seen that before.
Yes.
Okay. But here, every item you looked at had a displayed serial number.
That's correct.
And come in here. Nothing further, thank you.
Redirect examination.
Thanks for coming on. Take your time. All right, when you heard on the witness advice, you may.
We'll take our lunch recess now, and we'll resume with the examination of Sergeant Jones at 1:35.
All right, jury incident. Who's on the first roll, followed by the second roll? Please bring all your evidence.
Just before we break, Officer G gave me earlier this morning a question from one of the jurors, which was basically requesting an update on whether we're on schedule and also whether we would have any days for the foreseeable future that we have days, meaning we'd be recessing early. I realized I probably ought to have that question marked for identification. I plan to address it with them at the end of the day and tell them that, as I understand it, we're on schedule, that the lawyers expect that the jury will be given the case, have closing arguments, and the jury will be in deliberation sometime in the middle of this week. I haven't discussed with you, but on Thursday, I would ideally like to leave here by about 3 o'clock to attend a ceremony downtown. So I could certainly tell them that if I just want to discuss it with you when we come back right before lunch, so I can tell them. So does that sound, as far as what to tell them, as far as schedule, does that sound right?
I think we'll finish, as far as schedule wise, I think we'll finish redirecting Sergeant Jones pretty quickly, the CJIS rep. And I think maybe we'll have a witness or two tomorrow morning.
And just that we won't be taking a break between about 2:45 and 3:45 tomorrow afternoon.
That's right. I remember you had a meeting that you have to attend. That's correct. But I don't have to tell the jury that.
Okay.
Because they'll presumably still be deliberating at that time. We just, if the verdict were to happen to come, we just hold it for your return.
Today we're going through the full afternoon, right?
Yes. Okay. So if we can mark the note for identification, I want the lawyer to see it.
Mark or
Being 709 on the projector. Is that what I'm pointing to in the middle of 109?
Yes, sir.
Okay, earlier on your cross-examination, you were asked about airsoft guns. All that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If I understood your testimony, it sounds like one of the photos you were shown, well, we find the photo. You examined the vehicle on July 3rd, 2021, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware that there was a second examination of the vehicles later on?
There was, I was present for that.
Okay. Exhibits 110 and 111. I believe testified that you recalled seeing these types of items in the vehicle, but you did not seize them.
That's correct.
And what features of these things depicted in 110, 111 in evidence let you know that you should not seize them?
The orange tip on the front of each one of these items kind of stood out right away.
Okay, indicating they were airsoft guns and therefore not likely to be firearms?
Correct.
And put these on the projector. Can you see in exhibit 110, this item with the orange tip appears to be in some kind of zippered up soft case or bag?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm gonna put it exhibit 111 on the projector. Is that also the case with the tan looking item with the orange tip here also appear to be in some kind of zippering or soft case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did any of the pistols or shotgun or the bolt action rifle or the other apparent long guns that you recovered, were any of them found in type of case?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm going to show you exhibit 111 up close a little bit. I'd like you to look at up here. Can you see any locking mechanisms on the clasps, the gray clasps of that black rectangular case?
No, sir.
I'll just indicate for the jury what I showed you. Is that what I just pointed out to you?
Yes.
Find any locking cases for pistols or firearms in the vehicles during your examination?
Objection. Cases beyond the scope of cross.
Sergeant Jones, the toward the end of your cross-examination, you were asked to demonstrate certain parts of the Ruger rifle. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
You were standing in front of the jury, Sergeant Thompson, looking at parts of that rifle. And you were asked, I believe, about something called safety.
Yes, sir.
What is a safety?
Safety switch.
Yes.
When in position of safe, the weapon will not operate as designed. When it's in the position of fire or safety off, the weapon can be used as designed.
Is a safety switch on a rifle the same thing as a tamper resistant mechanical trigger lock?
No.
Nothing further for Sergeant Jones.
Thank you. Trooper, with exhibit 111 still up on the monitor. Sergeant. With exhibit 111 still up on the monitor, do you see any an orange an orange device at the bottom left of that screen?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree with me that that is like a zip tie or some kind of a locking mechanism?
That's very.
And back to the case up at the top middle to the left of the back panel. You testified just a moment ago that there are no clasps on that. Is that what you said?
There's no locking or a safety lock or a cable lock or anything there.
You agree with me that that orange locking mechanism could be used to lock that case, correct?
It's possible.
Just like how there's zip ties through the bolts on the rifles. You zip tie it through, or you can tie it through.
That cable right there, or
Yes, it's similar.
yes.
Another request.
Mr. John.
Nothing further.
Redirect.
Find any firearms or rifles with that type of device through them, through the action, like the rifles and weapons have been presented in court today?
Not at all.
Recross.
I'm all set, Your Honor.
Thank you. Sergeant, that concludes your testimony. Thank you very much. You're excused. Thank you, sir. Next witness call.
Your Honor, at this time, for a related sidebar discussion, Powell just wants to admit a few documents or comments.
Very well.
So Your Honor, Powell would first move to admit New York DMV documents for Mr. Stephen Anthony Perez in document format. Full version previously marked for identification as II, and move to admit them as Exhibit 67A to line up with the stipulation photo.
No objection.
There's no objection. I would like to be heard related to an instruction at this time.
Your Honor, just for the record, it only moves in under 63 feet.
And it was formerly FF, right? No. What was it? Identification?
GG, I believe it was GG.
PG.
Yes, it was PG for identification.
So Your Honor, at this time, the Powell's also moving the mark for purposes of identification, state of Michigan motor vehicle records. First.
You're seeking a marker for identification?
Yes.
Okay. They will be. Sorry? GB. Is that because you marked in the notes which are UU?
Yes.
Okay. So BV for identification.
So, I apologize for Aaron Johnson, just for the records clear.
Michigan motor vehicle records pertaining to Aaron Johnson.
And now the Powell's moving to admit as the next exhibit a redacted version of the state of Michigan motor vehicle.
So what is just introduced as BV for identification, or redacted version would be the next exhibit.
Right.
No objection.
No objection.
Okay. So the next exhibit is 113.
Correct. Okay. All right, before I move to the one more exhibit, I just ask you to remove straight place very briefly. So, Your Honor, at this time, the Commonwealth moved to admit a looking sheet for Mr. Aaron Johnson. The full version of the packet that contained that sheet was originally identified, marked for identification as Exhibit U. The Commonwealth's now moving to admit this is the next exhibit.
I gather there's no objection to this redacted version, you can copy the next exhibit.
Objection.
So it'll be exhibit 114.
Your Honor, at this time, I'll open the call status as on stand.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome. Good afternoon. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you say in a loud and clear voice, just like you're speaking now, your full name, good records from your last name?
Scott Ciccone, last name is Ciccone.
So let me apologize on record for mispronouncing your last name.
That's my whole life.
So where are you currently?
The Department of Criminal Justice Information Services.
And how long have you been employed with that agency?
9 years and 3 months.
And in what capacity works that?
I'm the manager of the Firearms Records Bureau.
And did you have any other prior experience in law enforcement or with other criminal justice agency before taking that position?
I did not.
So could you first just describe what is, I think I used the acronym COURTCAM. Can you just explain what that is?
Yeah, COURTCAM is a state agency that manages and administers law enforcement information and criminal justice systems, including the Firearms Records Bureau and the post-conviction witness notification program.
You already told
Just so I'm clear, jurors, the CGIS is TCGAIS, Department of Criminal Justice Information.
Correct.
And I believe you already told the jury your title. What are your responsibilities as an employee of these CGIS?
I manage the Firearms Records Bureau. I oversee a staff of 6 full-time employees.
Okay, what are your current sort of roles and responsibilities related to the firearms record?
I oversee the unit, which is a state designated repository for all firearms licensing transaction data. We do the 100% of the process for licensing for anyone that lives outside of the Commonwealth that wants a firearms license within Massachusetts. We act as the point of contact for all firearms related issues within the Commonwealth. And we do a statutory background check on all licenses that are approved by the PDs in Massachusetts. We do a secondary background check to make sure there's no statutory issues.
And so, besides your current role as manager, what other responsibilities have you had in relation to firearms record past?
I served previously as a program coordinator, one at the Firearms Records Bureau, which required me to conduct the interviews for applicants, as well as do all those background checks that I mentioned that were statutory required for us. Then I served as a supervisor, eventually manager.
So during this trial, there's been reference to a term called firearm identification card, also known as an FID. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Could you just describe very briefly what that is?
Yeah, FID card is a license that allows an individual in Massachusetts to own and possess a non-large capacity rifle or shotgun. Large capacity in Massachusetts is anything that can hold more than 10 rounds, including detachable magazines, or shotguns that hold more than 5 shells that are semi-automatic. You can be between the ages of 14 and 15 and apply for that license. You have to be 15 years old to actually be issued the license. It does not allow you to carry a firearm in Massachusetts. You could keep a rifle or shotgun in your home, bring it to the range, go hunting, but you could not walk down the street with a rifle on your back with an FID card.
All right, so I'd like to break some of that down because an FID card, as you just sort of testified, allows you to hold it in certain locations, the type of firearm or weapon. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, if you just specify what places an FID card allows.
Objection.
Basis.
Beyond the scope of the purpose of this witness.
It allows you to possess a rifle or shotgun. Actually, before you answer, let me hear you over that. I apologize. Let me. Sorry. Sorry.
So, you gonna try this, Mr. Chaconi?
Yes.
Okay. You also mentioned about, so you just testified about the FID card. If one wanted to carry a firearm on their person on the street or in the vehicle, is there a different type of license or documentation that has to be collected by the person in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Okay. What's that?
A license to carry, or an LTC for sure.
And do license to carries or LTCs have differing requirements in certain respects from an FID card?
Yes, they do.
What are some of the differences that you look for?
You have to be 21 years old to even apply for the license. And that is a license that's needed if you want to own, possess, or carry a handgun or pistol.
Okay, so FID, just to clarify, you have an FID card in Massachusetts. That encompasses rifles, shotguns, and ammunition.
Correct, but non-large capacity.
Okay. And so does the Firearms Record Bureau keep records of both FID card applications as well as LTC and license carry?
Yes.
And you testified earlier that the FID has to be sought by a Massachusetts resident. So what licenses or documentation out of state resident capable of receiving currently in Massachusetts?
A license to carry, which is a non-resident license to carry, which is good for 1 year.
Okay, and is the license to carry process the same or different? The actual process of applying, whether you're a resident or not?
It's similar in some aspects, but different in others.
Could you just describe briefly the license to carry process, just in general, what one has to go through to get a license?
Sure. If you are, say, a Massachusetts resident and you wanted a license to carry or ID, you would apply with the police department in your town or the licensing authority. Typically, it's the chief of police, the individual that's been designated with the task of approving or denying licenses. You would fill out a firearms application with them, check off if you're getting an LTC or an FID. You would send that into your police department with payment and law, as well as proof of residency in that town. You would send it to the licensing officer, who is a police officer that's designated by the chief to handle the processing of license applications. That licensing officer would have you come in, would meet with you, go over the application, take a photograph of the license, take your fingerprints, and then they would run a statutory background check on you. They would also enter that license information or the information that you entered onto the application into the MERC system, which is the Massachusetts Instant Record Check System, or MERCS, MIRCS for short. That is the online system that's used to process firearms license application.
Mr. Scott, I'm just going to interrupt you because that's the long narrative of a lot of information. Let's break that down a little bit. So for a resident license to carry application, what is a licensing?
It's an individual, typically the chief of police in the town or city in Massachusetts, that's designated with the task of approving or denying firearms license applications.
Okay, and the licensing officer, you mentioned that that's just the person designated by a town or city.
Correct.
So breaking down the steps a little bit, the person, do they need to provide any type of identification, state or federal identification that they initially apply for license?
Typically driver's license, as well as proof of residency in that town that they live there.
And after they fill out an application, I believe you testified they get fingerprinted, is that right?
Correct.
The next step is to send information out, to determine whether there are any sort of disqualifying offenses or other things that show up on a check.
Correct.
Okay. And without getting into detail, there are you're aware that there are certain statutorily mandated sort of disqualifying things that you have to look for in your role for processing license carry.
Yes.
And assuming, without getting into extensive detail, pass all those checks, they do all of the steps that you described, filling out an application, providing identification, and fingerprinting. Are there any additional steps in Massachusetts related to a resident license carry application?
Yes, they would need to take a Massachusetts basic firearm safety course, which is taught by a Mass state certified instructor. And then they would turn that certificate for that course into the licensing officer.
Okay, now, who provides the information to the Firearms Record Bureau about, for example, a resident license carry?
The licensing officers.
Okay, is that required that they provide that information for all applications?
Yes.
Is that regardless of whether the result is denied, or allowed, some other result?
Yes.
Okay. And are those kept in the normal course of business at the Firearms Record Bureau?
Yes.
And similarly with firearm identification cards, do they get inputted in the same way, in the same process?
Yes.
So I believe at the end of your last answer, you described something called MIRCS, also known as marks.
Yes.
Could you just clearly state what that is?
Sure. It's the Massachusetts Instant Record Check System. It's an online system that is used by the licensing authorities as well as the Firearms Records Bureau to process applications. So all that application information is entered into there. It's also used to as a repository for all firearms license and transaction data.
So walk me through how this first system works. Do you input the data into that system or do the licensing authorities?
For resident applicants that live in Massachusetts, it's through the licensing authority. For non-residents, it's that information sent by the Firearms Records Bureau.
Okay, so you've alluded that the process is slightly different already for non-resident licenses. Can you just describe who is the licensing authority for non-resident licenses here?
The Firearms Records Bureau.
Okay, so your office.
Correct.
And how is that process different than the resident license carry process, other than the fact that the Firearms Record Bureau is processing all of the license carry to the various cities and towns?
It's different in that we only issue license and carry. Our license is only good for 1 year. So the data is issued 1 year from that date. And it does not allow owners of that license to purchase ammunition or firearms within the Commonwealth. It only allows them to possess or carry.
Okay, so to circle back about the differences, the resident license to carry lasts how long?
Between 5 and 6 years, depending on when you get it issued compared to your birthday.
Okay, and for a non-resident license application, does the person need to appear in person in Massachusetts?
Yes.
Okay, and so would they appear at the Firearms Record Bureau office at the Massachusetts State Police?
It's not the state police, it's at the CGIS, we're located in Chelsea, Mass.
Oh, okay. So if a presumably, so hypothetically, a non-resident applies for a license to carry, they could appear in person at your office, provide the identification and go through the process like they would a resident license to carry application.
Yes.
And again, all those records get uploaded by the Firearms Record Bureau into what open call marks.
Yes.
Okay. Now, who maintains this?
The Firearms Records Bureau, or the CGIS as a whole.
Okay, so your employers.
My agency, correct.
Okay. Non-resident licenses are also in that overall database, right?
Yes.
Everything is maintained in normal course of business.
Yes.
And are you also statutorily required to keep these records?
Yes.
And that's pursuant to Massachusetts sort of firearm laws?
Correct.
So who has the ability to enter information?
The licensing officers or the Firearms Records Bureau.
Okay. Who has access to the information contained in this?
Licensing officers or the Firearms Records Bureau.
Okay. Do all law enforcement officers have access?
They do not.
So how do law enforcement officers not have access to this? Obtain information, for example, on firearms?
they would have to run what's called a BOP FI, which is the Board of Immigration Firearms Inquiry, through the Criminal Justice Information System, or CJIS for short.
Okay, so could you just describe what the CJIS system is in this respect?
Yes, it's an online system that has multiple databases within it, containing law enforcement information, such as the.
So just specific to the firearms.
The firearms records are in there, as well as transaction information.
Okay, so, and sort of, there are other types of databases that are available for CJIS, but just focusing your attention on firearms licensing and transfer records. What is a BOP-FI inquiry? How does a BOP-FI inquiry work? Let's start there.
The officer would just pull that up on CJIS, and it's very simple to run. You just enter individual's first name, last name, and date of birth.
Okay, and so this query that's conducted, what is it? What database is it running the query on?
It pulls its information from PERCS.
Does it pull its information from anywhere else? Or you could spot that way?
Just PERCS.
Okay, so this is an application that CJIS operates to allow people to make queries into the PERCS database.
Yes.
And as I understood your testimony earlier, you put in a name and a date of birth.
Correct.
And then the result either tells you whether someone has some record or not, right?
Yes.
So let's just say hypothetically you run a BOP-FI or BOP-FI inquiry, it comes back with a positive result. What kind of information will show up from the PERCS database?
It would show you the individual's name that he ran, as long as along with their date of birth, as well as a firearms license, whether it's an FID card, LTC, it would show you a number.
Okay, so it gives you a corresponding identification.
Yes.
And then you can use that information to sort of track that where that's from.
Yes.
Okay, so what would happen if you run a BOP-FI inquiry and there's no information comes up? What would that be?
It would come back as no records found.
And in this case, were you asked to run a series of BOP-FI inquiries?
I was.
So, Mr. Chicano, showing you what has been previously marked as QQ for identification. You recognize that?
Yes.
Is that a list of names and date of births that you did BOP-FI queries of?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And the actual queries that you conducted, those were done on June 3rd and June 4th of 2024?
Yes, correct.
You have a packet of those with you today?
It is.
Okay. Your Honor, maybe you briefly at the. Before I get to the actual results, does the database retain past records as well as active records?
Yes, it does.
So, how far back do the records go?
It goes back to the MERC system was created in 2004, but there's also records prior to that that were scanned and entered into the system.
And I believe I asked you about records related to whether it would show that it's denied, allowed, or it's active. Would it also show if there was an expired record?
Yes.
Okay, so it would show if there was any history of any record of FID or LTC, it would get its status.
Correct.
And also just to ask a follow-up to the BOP-FI inquiry, the BOP-FI queries, Do you utilize this sort of in various capacities and involved besides just testifying in trials?
Yes.
Okay. What other ways do you engage in bot inquiries? What other reasons?
We mostly for our non-resident licenses, we use the Modify as well as marks to see if someone's license is active or needs to be suspended, or certain if we needed to find a certain date that their license expired, we would use the Modify.
Okay, so when you're looking into the possibility of someone renewing, or if someone applies for a renewal, you might do a Modify to see if it's current account.
Correct. Objection.
Maybe heard on whisper.
So, if you just repeat this packet, I believe you have a copy of it. Thanks so much for this. Do you recognize that packet? And what is it?
It's a bunch of Modify records that were run.
Are these the ones you personally ran?
Yes.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of the Bob FI queries that you ran?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I move to admit this as evidence.
Subject to the objections that were already lodged, the Charles rule, it'll be exhibit 115.
So, just to run through briefly, you ran a query both Jamal, Devon, Sanders, Latimer, and Jamal to lead LeVay, both with the date of birth 4/17/92.
I did.
What was the results?
No records found.
What about Quinn Cumberlander and Quinn Kabir L, both with the date of birth 4/15/80?
No records found.
What about Aaron Lamont Johnson and Tariq Sharif Bay, date of birth, same date of birth, May 29/92?
No records found.
What about Aaron J. Jimenez and Devon El Garaf with the same date of birth, 4/12/90?
No records found.
What about Lamar Dow, Jamel Lamar Dow, and Jamil Roslobay, all with the same date of birth of 8/24/86?
No records found.
What about Stephen Anthony Perez, Lucia L. Portligatot, both with the date of birth 5/7/90?
No records found.
What about Como Pierre with the date of birth of 12/29/91?
No records found.
What about Omar Malik Antonio, date of birth 8/3?
No records found.
What about Robert Blaney Rodriguez and Robert L. Don, both with the date of birth 9/22/99? What about Wilfredo Hernandez Jr. and Will L. Musa, both with the date of birth 8/19/97?
No records found.
What about Brandon Britton and Messiah Bay, both with the date of birth 7/12/2000?
No records found.
So, just to follow up on what you said about works being first introduced in Massachusetts in 2004, what efforts were made to obtain or put into the database past records from other licensing agencies that predated this?
It's very extensive. We had scanned copies of the old licenses that were manually entered into the MERC system.
Okay, that was the process that every licensing authority was required to comply with. Yes. Okay. So. I need to step one. I don't have any further questions.
Cross examination, Mr. Thompson.
No cross, Your Honor.
Mr. Raisler.
No questions.
Mr. Ciccone? Mr. Ciccone, that concludes your testimony. Thank you very much. You're excused. Next witness, Commonwealth.
Commonwealth calls Henry Sullivan.
He asked the jurors, at this point I was inclined not to take a short afternoon recess, but if there are any jurors who would prefer to take one, just raise your hand, and I encourage you, if you need a break, ask for it. I promise no one will get upset, but if no one needs one, I would say. Any other litigants, parties?
We might need a minute just to get our witness on the stand.
That's fine, but I don't want to, we can, if that happens. But does anybody need
apart from that,
a recess? Okay, we'll go through. Especially what we just heard, which maybe in another part of the courthouse. If anybody wants to stand and stretch, please feel free.
Keith Thomas, swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. I do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, is it Trooper Sullivan?
Yes.
Good afternoon, welcome. You may proceed.
Yes, good afternoon. Could you please give us your full name, if you're good enough to spell your court report?
Sure. Heather Sullivan, HEHERSULLIV.
And who do you work?
Massachusetts State Police.
And how long have you held that employment?
Since 2005.
What is that?
Just about 19.
And what is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice.
Currently, where are you assigned with the state police?
I work for Crime Scene Services Section in Danvers.
How many years have you been practicing services section?
For about 13 years.
What is crime scene services section? What are your duties and responsibilities in that assignment?
So I respond to any major crimes, homicide, suicide, unattended deaths. I also respond to crime scenes like B&Es, car crashes, anywhere that the SPDU is required to respond. I also respond as well to local agencies, task force assistance.
Okay. And a minute ago, you used the acronym SPDU. What is that?
State Police Detective Unit.
So when you respond in any of these roles or for any of these reasons, what is your role in responding to those requests?
I would go and document the scene with photography, video, or sketch, whatever's needed. I would process the scene for fingerprints if necessary, as well as process evidence, collect evidence, and bring it back to my office for later processing.
And could you tell us about whether you have any training and background with respect to looking at fingerprints on items or comparing?
Yes, we're trained in fingerprints, palm print identification, comparisons, and exclusions. We've taken numerous classes in crime scene,
And we take yearly classes to stay up to date with those processes.
Okay. In terms of annual proficiency tests related to fingerprints and other things you do in practice services, how about those?
We take different proficiencies and all the different things we do, like for instance, tire track, footwear, as well as fingerprint or thumbprint comparisons.
Have you ever had to testify in court about your efforts to locate fingerprints or to compare fingerprints to known samples?
Yes, in respects.
At what courts?
Suffolk Superior Court, gone to court in New Hampshire, Brockton, Salem, Suffolk, Essex, mostly around here. So over the last 13 years, numerous things.
Could you tell us first of all what a fingerprint is, meaning what it's made of?
Sure. Before you're born, on your hands, there are raised ridges that grow as you grow, and they stay unique and persistent to you. On your palms of your hands, fingerprints, as well as soles of your feet, these raised ridges are there for purposes of gripping. And these raised ridges have pores, and when you excrete sweat, the sweat comes out of those pores, so anytime you touch something, you leave a replica or partial replica behind on any item you touch.
Okay, so what is the term latent print?
Latent print is pretty much an invisible print. Usually you have to enhance it somehow in order to see the print better. Some things like mirrors or windows, you can see fingerprints without being enhanced, but for the most part, a latent print would be one that you can't do with the naked eye. You would need to use light or chemical enhancement to see better.
Now, we've been calling them fingerprints, latent prints. Is there a term that's sometimes used in this field called friction-rich imprints?
Yeah, so in my report, I would refer to them as friction-rich impressions.
I see. But you're referring essentially to fingerprints.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're in your training experience, when you're presented with different types of items, what are the methods you've been trained in to examine those items to see if there are fingerprints on them that can be examined later?
So first, I would look at any items, see if I can see impressions with the naked eye. Then I would use light. Then I would further enhance these anything that I can't see with a chemical called cyanuric acrylate, which is the same thing as super glue. We would put something in a chamber and heat up the super glue, which would adhere to any fingerprints left on any item. We would also use powders to try to enhance any prints left behind. On paper or cardboard, we would use another kind of chemical that we would actually have to heat up in order to see any impressions.
Okay. And so some items you might use the super glue fuming technique in a fuming chamber, is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Once you've applied one of those methods to actually enhance the fingerprints, what do you actually do to collect them so you can study them or examine them later?
So for the most part, we would photograph them in place with a scale, so I can take those photographs and later enhance them or put them into APHIS in order to try to identify those.
What is the acronym APHIS?
So,
And so you tell us what APHIS is.
basically a computer program that fingerprints are uploaded into and possibly attempted to identify.
Okay. Now, did you examine a series of objects in connection with this investigation? at the state police crime then?
I did.
Okay. And generally speaking, over the types of objects you examine, what we look
Firearms, ammunition, and magazines, and I was looking for friction ridge impressions on those items.
and about how many objects did you examine that were submitted to you for fingerprinting or fingerprint exam?
I believe there's about 15 different items, different item numbers, as well as some of those items were broken down further because there's numerous crimes with those items.
Okay, so in the case of a pistol that was submitted to you that had a magazine with ammunition in it, before doing your examination, what did you do?
I would document the items as was, and then I would take the ammunition out of the magazine and then photograph it again. Prior to process.
What I'd like to do is show you a couple of items. And once you did your examination, did you document the results of whether you found anything in some kind of report?
Yes.
Let's show you three photographs. You can tell me if you recognize that.
Yes.
Okay. What are those items depicted in those photographs?
Firearm, magazine, and ammunition that I had processed.
Okay. Those photographs, are they fair and accurate depictions of those items during your examination?
But they look like after my examination.
Okay. And first photograph in the 3 pages is what? Pistol?
Firearms.
What about the second page?
That would be the magazine.
And the third page is what?
Ammunition that came from the magazine.
I would offer these as the next exhibit. Could you tell us what each item number is, the state police item number?
Firearm, this case was item 2-3, magazine was 2-4, and the ammunition was 2-4.1.
Yeah,
Basis.
cumulative, the photograph.
Probably super. Before I mark this, you see first page of the photographs is item 2-3. See that?
Yes.
Putting exhibit 78 for you. You see the item number for the pistol in this box.
Yes.
What is it?
2-3.
So the same item in the photograph?
Yes.
Right. Be so marked over the objection is noted in sidebar. That's the photograph?
Yes.
And exhibit 115.
160.
Right, thank you. Exhibit 116.
Putting on the projector. Okay. when you find a fingerprint, how can you determine whether there's enough information for it to be usable to make some kind of comparison later on?
Just to look at, the whole fingerprint, so you have to see if there's, how many ridges are left behind on the item, or if it looks like partial fingerprint, or part of the fingerprint itself would be a delta, which is, just a formation on your finger. Or, if you have the core area, which is just another section of your finger, you're basically trying to see how much information was left behind and if there's enough to compare it. So usually if I see 1 or 2 ridges, you're not going to be able to really compare 1 or 2 ridges versus having 20 or 30 ridges left behind in the item. So really determine, depends on how many ridges I would see or how much information is left behind, where I would then photograph it for further analysis.
So on the objects that are depicted in Exhibit 116, the pistol, the magazine, and the ammunition, did you recover or did you observe any fingerprints that could be examined later and possibly used for comparison?
Yeah.
Show you another item. Please look at this photograph. How do you recommend that is?
Yes, item 2-7 is a magazine.
Okay. How do you recognize it in that photograph?
It has the lens number next to it, the item number written next to it, with a scale.
And let's grab an exhibit for you. And you exhibit 99B is a void. You see a state police item number on that?
Yes, 2-7.
So is that a photograph of the item contained in exhibit 99B as a void?
It is.
Okay. And it's the photograph here an accurate depiction of the way this looked. This item 99B as a void looked after you did your exam.
Yes.
What offer this?
Same objection. Okay, the objections are ruled. This is exhibit 117.
Were you able to locate any fingerprints with enough detail that you could recover them and make an analysis and comparison of from exhibit from this magazine? Can you see on the photograph the white substance on that magazine?
Yes, it's white powder.
Show you. Look at the 3-page document I've just placed before you. Tell me if you recognize what those documents are.
Yes, it's the firearm magazine ammunition that I processed.
Okay. And is the photograph a fair and accurate depiction of the way it looked when you were done processing?
It was, yes.
Showing you now exhibit 75, A, B, and C. See that?
2-1, the legal inside.
Is that the pistol that we see in the first page of the photograph?
It is.
What about these two items, 75, A, and B?
2-2 is the magazine, 2-2.1 is the ammunition.
These photographs are fair and accurate depictions of these items that they appeared after your exam?
Yes, sir.
I'll offer this is the next exhibit.
Subject to the same objections, it will be exhibit 118.
Briefly publish each page of exhibit 118 for the jurors. Page 1. Is that the pistol?
Yes.
The CZ pistol?
Yes.
Page 2 is what?
Magazine.
Page 3 is what?
Ammunition.
Were you able to examine all of these items and were you able to find any fingerprints of sufficient detail that you could examine them and eventually make a comparison on?
Yes, I examined them and there was no fingerprints for it.
Showing you a 5-page set of photographs. Please look at that. Tell me if you recognize those things.
It's firearm magazine, ammunition, another magazine, and ammunition.
Okay. What are the state police item numbers on them?
Item 2-9, 2-10, 2-10.1, 2-11, 2-11.1.
Are they fair and accurate depictions of the way the items in each photograph appeared after your examination?
That's correct.
I'll offer these photographs as the next.
Same objection, counsel. With the objection noted and overruled, it will be exhibit 119.
And exhibit 119 on the projector. Handing you some items that are already in evidence. 83A is an atom. B is in boy. C is in Charlie. D is in David. How do those exhibits correspond to the items depicted in exhibit 119?
The magazine, the ammunition, from that.
That were submitted along with this.
Yes.
This is some form of pistol that has some kind of external casing.
Yes.
Showing the jurors, publishing the jurors, page 1 of exhibit 119. 2 magazine. 3 with the ammunition. 4 another magazine. 5 other set of ammunition. And examining all these items, were you able to locate any fingerprints on them of sufficient detail that you could actually analyze and make a comparison?
No.
Okay. You have a photograph. Recognize that?
It's another rifle.
Okay.
Right.
And how do you know it? How do you recognize it?
I processed it and see what
Okay. Is it a fair and accurate depiction of that item as it appeared after you did your exam?
Yes.
And for Exhibit 72, I've also placed before you. Can you tell me, looking at the item numbers, how this exhibit relates to the photograph I placed before you?
The fire. Right.
Okay. We'll offer the photograph.
Same objection. With that objection noted and overruled, would be to the 120.
So far.
Publishing for the jurors, Exhibit 120. In your examination of this rifle, item 2-19 on the state police inventory list, Exhibit 120, were you able to find any fingerprints of sufficient detail and clarity that you could make you could analyze them and make a comparison?
I did not.
Photograph I placed before you, do you recognize the items in that photograph?
Yes, item 2-16, right.
Okay.
And the magazine 2-18, ammunition 2-18.1.
Okay. Bear with me for a moment if you would, miss. Exhibits 79A. You recognize the item on that?
Yes, 2-18 would be right.
So submitted, is that right?
Yes.
79B.
Is 2-18.1, which is the ammunition.
Okay. But we'll let you look at Exhibit 79 itself too. Tell me what relation this bears to the photograph before you.
2-16 is the right.
Okay. Would offer the photograph that's been listed for you.
State objection, I gather, exhibit noted, it'll be Exhibit 121.
Jurors. Miss, can you see on the trooper? Can you see on the projector both the rifle, the magazine, and the ammunition?
Yes, sir.
For Exhibit 121.
Yes.
Were you able to locate any fingerprints of sufficient detail or clarity on any of these items that you could potentially examine them and make a comparison.
Yeah.
You got your point. Look at this photograph. Tell me if you recognize what that is.
Firearms, item 2-12.
And where do you know that item from?
Process.
From processing it where? Okay. How does the item in that photograph relate to Exhibit 73, which I just played before? Is there a fair and accurate depiction in that photograph of the way this firearm looked after you finished your exam?
It was, yes.
I'm all about the photograph.
Same objection, then, assuming, in essence, a continuing objection, it's overruled Exhibit 122.
Publishing Exhibit 122. You see the white substance on the item in Exhibit 122?
Yes.
Find any fingerprint on that item, sufficient detail or clarity, you could analyze that and make it clear.
Yes.
Photograph. Tell me how you recognize what it is, or if you recognize what it is.
It's a firearm from item 2-30.
I'm also showing you Exhibit 85. You could take a peek and tell us what the relation is, if any, between Exhibit 85 is in that photograph. Same item?
Same items.
Okay. So a fair and accurate depiction of that photograph of the way this looked when you finished yours.
Yes, sir.
How about this photograph?
Assuming the same continuing objection, which is overruled Exhibit 123.
Putting Exhibit 123 on the projector, did you locate any fingerprints on that item with sufficient detail or clarity that you could potentially analyze them and make a comparison?
Yeah.
Just for my notes, this is the item that was identified by our previous witness as a semi-automatic shotgun.
That's correct. Show you this photograph, trooper, you would tell me if you recognize what that item is and how.
This is the firearm 2-20 that I processed.
Today, fair and accurate depiction of the item as it appeared after your exam.
Yes.
And if you would look at Exhibit 82 that I've also placed before you, tell us how photograph relates to this.
Same item 2-20.
Appears to be some kind of bolt action rifle.
Yes.
I'm all about the photograph.
Same objection. It's overruled Exhibit 122.
Publishing this with the jurors. Did you locate any fingerprints on that item of sufficient detail or clarity to potentially analyze them and make a comparison?
No, sir.
Did you also examine a series of samples and ammunition as well?
Yes.
Okay. And did you document that in a second report about your efforts to locate fingerprints on those items?
Talking about the ammunition we just showed, correct?
Some of it, yes.
Yes.
In all the items you examined in this case, did you find any usable fingerprints, meaning fingerprints of sufficient clarity for detailed fingerprints?
I did not find any in this case.
Okay. In your many years with crime scene services, have you become familiar with the different factors that can affect whether or not a fingerprint is left on a surface and is therefore available later to be recovered and examined?
Yes, there's numerous reasons why a fingerprint might not be left behind on an item. And that would be because of the actual substrate, which is the surface. If it's smooth or if it's porous, meaning it would absorb any moisture. In this case, specifically the firearms, firearms have anti-corrosive material that they're made of, so they won't rust, which would also repel any fingerprint or water or moisture from your fingerprints. So sometimes that would make it so a fingerprint's not left behind on a firearm.
And how many comparisons or identification of fingerprints have you made?
Thousands.
How many times have you had to process firearms, magazines, and ammunition to look for fingerprints to try to recover?
Many, many times.
Okay. Do you have a sense of how frequently you are able to actually locate and recover the fingerprint of sufficient detail and clarity on a firearm to then use to make comparison?
It's a very low percentage. I have identified fingerprints on firearms, magazines, or ammunition. However, it's a very low percentage rate due to the anti-corrosive materials. Fingerprints are also very delicate. They can be wiped away. People wearing gloves, they might not leave one behind, or they can wipe it away at any time.
So if I understand it, it's partially, it can be affected by the material it's potentially being left on, whether the person's touching it with their bare skin or not, whether it's wiped away. Are there also environmental factors that can affect it?
Yes, so if it's extremely hot, any moisture would evaporate, or at the same time it's very cold outside, you might not sweat enough to leave up your fingerprint behind on an item.
Cross-examination, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Putting exhibit 116 up on the board. So you were just testifying that depending on the finish on the material, that could also make it difficult for a fingerprint to remain on the item. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that fair to say also for things like a grip?
Correct, yes.
And also for any ridges or grooves that may be on a firearm? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Looking up at exhibit 116 up on the monitor, is that the chemical dust that you use to look for fingerprints? Is that what we see around above where the thumb would be?
That is the white powder, yes.
So the reason why there's none of that white material over the grip is because it's virtually impossible for a fingerprint to appear on that grip. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. The whole firearm had been processed, whether you can tell or not in that area.
Right. So in that photograph, you did test the entire firearm, even
The whole entire firearm.
Very well.
All of the items.
No other questions?
Mr. Rayson,
No question.
redirect.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Members of the jury, there were a couple of reasons I think we're going to stop here. It doesn't make sense under the current circumstances to call the Commonwealth to call its next witness. So hopefully we'll continue minimally at least. Before I give you the line of the instructions, we got a note from one juror asking for a sort of update on, are we on schedule, where are we? And after getting that note, I conferred with the attorneys who assure me that we are, in their view, a bit ahead of schedule. So their expectation at this point is they will begin deliberating this case in the middle of this week. So perhaps as early as, I don't like to predict, and then people say you predicted this, you were wrong, but I think Wednesday is not a bad sort of guesstimate, and that's all it is as to when you would begin your deliberations. Now, of course, we don't know how long deliberations take. The length of deliberations varies from jury to jury, and it's, as I said in my instructions, it's up to the jury to do the time that it needs. But we, I'm told by counsel, are a bit ahead of the schedule that I had laid out for you. So hopefully that answers the question. The second part of the question was whether we would have any half days this week. I think the answer is probably no, because we're having you come a little bit later in the mornings, including tomorrow morning. Everybody remember tomorrow at 10, not at 9. But when we do that, it makes it harder for us it makes it harder. It makes it less necessary for us to have half days because we're doing things in the morning instead. So I hope that's helpful to whoever asked the question, and I wouldn't be surprised if other jurors have the same question as well. So hopefully that's helpful. And then just to remind you of the instructions, please continue not to discuss the evidence or anything about this case with anyone, including each other, obviously until you're part of the deliberating jury. And even then, only when you are formally in the jury room, having sent you there to either commence or continue your deliberation. So once you start deliberating, at the end of the day, if you haven't reached a verdict and you go home and you leave in groups, even then, when you're leaving groups, you can't discuss the things. It's only when you're all together formally deliberating as a jury. As you know, conversation and discussion, it was not only when you hear conversations or phone conversations, it also means that you can't use a cell phone, tablet, or other device to text, chat, email, tweet, blog, or post anything about this case with social media or electronic media or anywhere else. Must continue to have communication with the lawyers, the parties to witnesses in this case. I expect they will abide by my word that they have no communication with you whatsoever. You must continue not to read, watch, or listen to any coverage about this case, traditional media, social media, or anywhere else. Who are exposed to any type of coverage, remember my 2 instructions. First, do your best to minimize the information you take in. We've talked before about how to do that. I don't need to repeat that for you. And second, if you are exposed to any type of coverage, please don't mention it to your fellow jurors in any way. Don't even refer to the fact that you've been exposed to something. Just say nothing about it to your fellow jurors. Instead, connect with the court officers, let them know that you'd like to speak with them privately and tell them what it is you've been exposed to. Finally, please continue not to do any research or investigation about this case, online or otherwise, or allow anyone else to do so for you. So with that, let me speak to Officer G. Bradley. So with that, members of the jury, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
All right, jury exit. We saw the first roll, followed by the second roll. Please bring your items.
From